Let's bring in Barbara McQUADE now, MSNBC legal analyst and former U.S. attorney in Michigan. Barbara, thanks for joining us yet again today on this. This is some major breaking news, a major development here, and hearing about this closed-door testimony from Jeffrey Rosen. Want to play some sound for you from Senator Dick Durbin recalling Rosen's testimony.
He told us a lot, 7 hours of testimony, and I might quickly add this was done on a bipartisan basis. Democratic staff and Republican legal staff asking questions during this period of time. Mr. Rosen appeared voluntarily, which says a lot, and cooperated with us. The Justice Department had set it up for us and said we're waiving any privilege. He can speak to any issue. We're not holding him back. And I thought he was very open, and there's a lot there, an awful lot there. You can imagine 7 hours of testimony.
And then, Barbara, you got Senator Richard Blumenthal essentially saying, listen, Rosen revealed things that are not known publicly, new things to this investigation. Where does this now lead the investigation?
Well, I think it's a great illustration of how so often we assume that what is in the public domain is the whole story.
Right.
And so often in investigations, there are additional facts that are not publicly known. So there's plenty more than what has been publicly reported. I also think one very significant reason that Jeffrey Rosen was able to tell these investigators the facts is because the Justice Department has waived any executive privilege here. Donald Trump's lawyer sent them a letter last week saying that they want to step in and assert executive privilege. And so I think the clock was ticking to get in front of this committee to share this information. And so now they have done so, which may act as a practical waiver of the material. Once the information is out, you can't really protect its secrecy anymore. But I think there are a number of places this could lead. I mean, one is this should be shared with the January 6th committee to look at any connections between it. And I think it also could be shared with criminal prosecutors for possible criminal violations. The one that comes to mind is the one that Robert Mueller used against the Russian Internet Research Agency. It's sometimes referred to by prosecutors as a Klein conspiracy, but it is conspiracy to defraud the United States by undermining part of the function of the United States. So in this instance, and as Robert Mueller alleged, the free and fair elections in the United States. And so that is one possible charge. There are others, including election fraud, that come to mind, but certainly the facts will matter. But all of these things are pointing to a conspiracy of using the machinery of government to subvert the election.
So let's talk about a couple of different tentacles here that are coming out from what you just said, because you're talking about possible criminal violations here, the charges that could feasibly be leveled against various individuals. I'm assuming you're talking about the former president and how that could feasibly be deciphered, considering this investigation and some of the details that are emerging. Let's also touch on Jeffrey Clark, mentioned the New York Times reporting coming out of this testimony from Rosen. At the time, the acting head of the Justice Department's Civil Division. Talk to me, Barbara, about what you know of Jeffrey Clark's relationship with the former president and the conversations that he had been having, according to this testimony, with the former president of ways to cast doubt on the election results of 2020.
Yeah, so President Trump was urging the leadership of the Justice Department, like acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and his deputy, Richard Donahue, to just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me. And they wouldn't play ball. They said, no, it wasn't corrupt. We're not going to do any of that. But Donald Trump did find a willing participant in the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Division, Jeffrey Clark. And in fact, the public reporting is that Clark met privately with President Trump, completely forbidden under the Department of Justice policies about communications with the White House. That is to be done in a very formal way between White House counsel and only the Attorney General or his deputy. The idea that the president is talking with an underling and planning a strategy is alone highly irregular. And then we've seen this letter that he drafted for the signature of the acting Attorney General to send out to all the states, including Georgia, where the elections were close and could swing the election in favor of Donald Trump. This is so far out of the lane of the Justice Department, providing legal advice to states about how they could engineer a different result in their state. They could say, and he cites the statutes, that we declare our election failed because there's so much irregularity. Therefore, it throws the election to our legislatures, which were all controlled by Republicans, which can now cast the votes for our state, and we cast the vote for Donald Trump. He laid out that roadmap for them. So I think that Jeffrey Clark, along with Donald Trump and anyone else who was part of this, should be concerned about conspiracy charges.
Two things I want you to tackle before I let you go. Do you know anything more about Jeffrey Clark, who he is?
I really don't. You know, he's a lawyer. He worked first. He was the head of the Environmental and Natural Resources Division, and then he led the Civil Division. But beyond that, I don't know much about him.
Okay, the second thing is, how is it that they now decipher as to whether or not there is criminal liability for either Jeffrey Clark and or the former president?
Well, one of the things prosecutors will do in a case like this is to look at all the information they have, try to get a full picture of what was happening, and especially in a case like this, their intent, the intent of those involved. So that may require interviewing people around those others. You know, Mark Meadows, for example, the chief of staff, strikes me as somebody who would be very important to understand what his role was. People who talked to Jeffrey Clark about what the game plan was here, and anyone else who might have information. The other thing that prosecutors can do is they can use legal process to obtain emails, text messages, and other documents that can help understand what was going on in people's communications.
If, though, the president is able to exert executive privilege, would then someone like Mark Meadows be able to skirt around testifying?
Quite possibly. You know, one of the things about executive privilege is it's not absolute, and so the Supreme Court has said it must yield at times when there is a criminal investigation that is pending. And so I think ultimately the Justice Department, if it needs information for a criminal investigation, could get it. But the assertion of executive privilege in the courts could further delay any resolution of that.
A lot of good information there. Barbara McQuade, thank you, as always, for breaking it down. Appreciate it.